recording, and thanks. And Nikki, why don't you take it away?
Yes, well, welcome everybody. My name is Nikki Johnson, and I'm excited to be here with you today. I've also got Sarah Crimmins, and we'll introduce ourselves just a little bit more here in a second. But we're going to kick off our webinar today about managing and saving and investing in challenging times, or in changing times, excuse me, with a poll. So you'll see that up on your screen here, and we just want to know why you're participating with us today, why you're hanging out with us. We're going to give you just a little bit of time to answer that. Looking pretty good here. I'll give just a couple more seconds to get everybody the opportunity to answer that. I think we're looking pretty good. Okay, I'm going to end our poll here. And can everybody see we've got about 59% of you who are here for personal use. You're going to use this for yourselves at home. And then 41% of you are using this as a split. You're going to use this in your professional life as well as your personal life. This is great for us to know. Thank you so much for sharing. So let's move right into it. Like I mentioned, I am Nikki Johnson. I'm an extension educator for community health and nutrition, and I'm going to be joined today by Sarah Croymans, who is an extension educator for family resiliency. Sarah is also an accredited financial counselor. So she's got that wonderful financial counseling expertise. And myself, I'm still an intern. So that's why I get to help out with Sarah today. So I'm really excited to be here and go through some things with you today on saving and investing. We also have with us our webinar producer, Rick Meyer. He's going to be hanging out in the background here, really making sure things move really smoothly for us this afternoon. He is providing us support with any tech issues. He's going to kind of keep monitoring in the chat box for us, as well as providing some links in the chat. So if you should need any help with any tech issues, feel free to message Rick. Thanks again, Rick. Couldn't do this without you. Okay, so our time together, we're going to go through three main things. We're going to talk about saving and investing options. We're also going to talk about discovering some strategies to find money in your budget to save and invest, as well as identify how you can make your money work for you. So what is the difference between saving and investing? Now, this is a question for all of you. We'd love for you to be able to answer in the chat here. We'll kind of keep an eye on things, but what do you think the difference between saving and investing is? Because there is a difference. Is everybody too shy to add in the chat? What's the difference between saving and investing? Oh, there we go. Jen said, saving money builds up and sits, investing the money works for you, generally helping you to make more money. Great. Chad, more risk investing. Yes. Saving is not spending. Investing is trying to get your savings to make more money. Savings does not gain much. Great responses so far. Saving for something urgent, not getting it back. Investing, money will come back. I love these. Feel free to keep adding those in here. But we'll move on to the next thing. So yeah, you're getting a really good idea. We'll dig into this just a little bit more in a bit. But first we wanted to think about some different scenarios. We thought this was kind of a fun way to get us thinking about different financial goals and whether or not this would be an opportunity for you to put away some savings, put away money for savings, or if this would be more of an investment. So thinking about the scenario on the screen here, building an emergency fund before the end of the year. Do you think this would be a scenario in which you would save or invest? And again, feel free to add in the chat. Excellent. Okay, seeing lots of saves here. Great. Yeah, this is going to be a scenario in which we'll save. It's a short-term goal. How about here? Have a down payment for a house in 10 years. Okay, we got a little bit of a mix here. Excellent. All right. So we actually categorize this as an opportunity to invest. This is more of a long-term goal for which the money isn't really going to be needed soon. So by taking some risk, it may mean that you'll have a higher return. Next one, buy a new bicycle in 6 months. Save or invest. Okay, great. Yep, I'm seeing the saves come on through here. Again, this is going to be a short-term goal. And really when we think about saving for these types of items, it's, low risks and it can give you easy access to the money. So maybe you hit your financial goal a tish sooner. It would be easy to access. It'd be very liquid. How about here? Open a retirement account to help you retire in 40 years. Okay, yeah, I assumed we were going to get all invest here. Absolutely, this is going to be an opportunity for investment. What about have a down payment for a car next year? Save or invest? Okay, good. Yeah, this is going to be an opportunity to save. Again, kind of that short-term goal. This is going to be happening within the next year. And one more scenario. This is going to be your financial goal to build wealth over your lifetime. Is this going to be an investment or saving? Oh, I like that answer, Matthew. Maybe a little bit of both. Yeah, we kind of put this down for investment, but I think you're absolutely right. This is kind of a situation in which we could be doing a little bit of both. Thank you all for playing along here with us. So I think you were kind of catching on to maybe some differences between when you would invest versus save. But there's going to be some key differences between the two, and maybe you didn't even make that distinction right away, but we kind of boil it down to these 4 key differences. When we're talking about saving versus investing, we want to look at the time frame. When is that money needed? How long do you have to save or invest, right? Short term versus long term, maybe. We're also going to look at risk. So in finance, risk really refers to the degree of uncertainty about this rate of return, which I'll touch on here in just a moment. But that rate of return on an asset, as well as the potential harm that could arise when those returns are not what you are expecting. So in general, as an investment risk rises, the investor seeks higher returns to kind of compensate them for taking those risks. Liquidity is also going to be another difference between saving and investing. So liquidity generally refers to how easily or quickly a security can be bought or sold in a secondary market. Liquid investments can be sold really readily without paying a hefty fee. And then finally, we've got a rate of return, which is going to be the net gain or loss of an investment over a specific time period. And it's oftentimes talked about as a percentage of the investment's initial cost. So let's look at the differences between some of these here. So saving. After we're looking at time frame, that liquidity, that rate of return, as well as the risk, when do we want to be saving? When do we want to be investing? So saving is really this way we can accumulate money in an account that has very little or no risk of losing value. It's a very safe and I would say even comfortable way to accumulate money for those really short-term goals or expenses. The funds are easily liquidated, right? We can easily get to them. We can easily grab them. But that means also that the rate of return is typically a little bit lower. On the other hand, we've got investing. So with investing, those assets, you're going to purchase assets with the potential to increase that value over time, right? In a way, you might be able to take advantage of interest and time to accumulate more money for those longer term goals. Now with investing, there's going to be a little bit higher risk, right? So because we're going to have a little bit higher risk, that means we have the potential for higher returns. And when you invest in something, you can liquidate the funds, it oftentimes takes just a touch longer to be able to access those.
Thank you, Nikki. So I'll pick it up here for the next few slides. We really wanted to say, set a foundation as we think about saving and investing. There's a lot of things that we need to pay attention to before we jump into saving and investing. And you can see these 5 items on this slide, and we're going to look at each one of these individually. Nikki talked about the time frame. So when we think about goals, we might be looking at short-term, intermediate, or long-term goals. And those can be sliced and diced a variety of ways, but typically short-term goals might be in that 1 to 3 year, intermediate 3 to 10, and those long-term goals 10 years or more. And that'll help us think about saving or investing, what might be most appropriate. And every situation is going to be a little bit different. So as we're thinking about those goals, we want to frame them as a SMART goal. And I feel like we use this slide over and over in many of our webinars, but this helps us really frame what do we want to do? What do we want to achieve? So having specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound goals is really very important. And we could do a whole webinar on goal setting, and I think maybe we have in the past, but we want to frame those goals in this way because that'll help us make decisions. We will be sharing a set of the slides in a follow-up email, so you'll be getting all of these details in that way as well. So another question here, how can saving or investing help you reach your goals? Why do you think the goals and the saving and investing are connected? So how can saving or investing help you reach your goals? Go ahead and put some thoughts in the chat there. For anybody that likes to ride bikes, this was on the Mickelson Trail out by the Black Hills of South Dakota. One of my favorite places. How can savings and investing help us reach those goals?
I guess I always think of retirement, Sarah. Like that's my go-to. I eventually don't want to have to work.
Yeah.
And in order to be able to reach that goal, I'm going to need to save and I'm going to need to invest. I'm going to do a combination of the two.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Nikki. Daniel says savings provides financial security for emergencies. Yes, we're going to be talking about that. Teresa talks about slowly saving is easier than all at once, right? So a little bit at a time can help us work towards those. And so I want to make sure that we encourage everybody to spend time on those goals and the goal setting. And chances are you're going to have goals in all three of those short-term, intermediate, and long-term categories. And we're going to need to refer to those throughout the process. So then the next step on that financial plan is to develop a spending plan or a budget. And we have done webinars solely on this topic as well. But it's really very important to look at what kind of money's coming in, that income, what kind of money's going out with those expenses, and figure out what that bottom line is. And when we work on the spending plan or budget, we want to make sure it's really realistic, and we want to make sure we're addressing looking at just take home pay, right? Once all the taxes and deductions are taken out, and income that we're sure of, right? So sometimes you get overtime, not always. We want to base the spending plan in that case on no overtime. When we look at the expenses, we want to look at the fixed, flexible, and non-monthly expenses and build that into the monthly plan so we know what does it cost to live on an average month. When we compare that income and expenses, and of course in the expenses, we're looking at all of our debts as well. Then we look at that step 3 with that bottom line. Are we short dollars, or do we have some excess dollars? And if we've got some money left over at the end of our spending plan here, definitely then we just found some money that we can use for saving and investing. If we have a negative bottom line, then we definitely need to do some work so that we can get a balanced spending plan and find some dollars, right? Cutting expenses or perhaps increasing income. So developing that spending plan is one of those foundational strategies that we really encourage. The next one is to determine your net worth. And a net worth statement is really, it shows kind of a financial snapshot that shows what you own and what you owe. So what is your financial position or situation today? And this is just a really rough one right here, but you list all of your assets, and you look at all of your liabilities and you compare them, and hopefully we have a positive number. Now, many families do this on an annual basis because it's a good little test or litmus test, a little check-in to see where we're at. And we want our net worth to increase every year, meaning we have more assets, and our saving and investing is a big piece of that, and fewer liabilities. So for example, if we were to take all of our assets, and if we were to sell them today, or we put a price tag on what they were worth, and if, let's say, we had assets that valued $28,000 today, and for example, if I had $8,000 in credit card debt, loans and other debts, so today my net worth would be $20,000. I took my $28,000 assets, subtracted the $8,000 that I had in liabilities. And so in this case, my net worth would be $20,000. But again, by doing this on a monthly basis, it helps us keep on track and make sure that we're moving in the right direction. So developing a net worth statement is a good thing to do. Some people like to do it at the new year, or on their birthday, or some special day during the year, and then just repeat that every year so you can see where you're at. The next piece that we encourage folks to do is to look at determine their debt to net income ratio. That's kind of a tongue twister for me. And that really helps us look at current debt usage and your capacity to take on more debt. And I think it's really important because it'll help us look at, is debt getting in my way for saving and investing? Do I have too much debt? Do I really need to work to pay that down? And so to come up with this, we look at monthly debt payments, divide that by net income, so that take home pay, and that's going to give us that debt to net income ratio. So you can see we have an example here with some sample income and expenses. And in this situation, the person has a 21% debt to net income ratio. Now, if folks are below 10%, that's a good thing. So they're not overloaded with debt. If they are on that 15%, they're on the edge. And if they have 20% or more, that's kind of a red alert that you really need to pay attention to how much debt you're carrying, because that's really going to inhibit saving and investing. So in this situation with the 21%, this person is really has really a lot of debt, and so they're probably having difficulty paying other bills, and there's probably not a lot of money left over to save and invest. So we would really suggest working on getting debt paid down. Now, this example is a debt to net income ratio. Some lenders will use a debt to gross income ratio. So they'll use that gross income before any taxes or deductions are taken out. So just know that there's a couple different versions of this piece. The last piece that we identified in that financial plan is really to make that commitment. So taking that first step and setting aside money for saving and investing is deciding that it's possible to do that, right? So
Sure.
getting yourself in that mindset. Yes.
I think there was a question in the chat going back to your previous slide. Can you
Yes.
define debt?
Yes. So when we're looking at a debt to net income ratio, we would list any debts that you have. Now on the net ratio, we are not using a mortgage, but any credit cards, car loans, furniture loans, student loans, those types of things. I would not include utilities or food, groceries, that kind of thing, but credit cards, loans, again, student loans, a car loan, those types of things.
Would you include rent?
No, nope, we would not in this case. We will be sending a follow-up email, and Rick, I'm going to ask you to keep a list for us, and we will include a link or a worksheet or something to help with developing a debt to net income ratio. Good questions. Thank you. All right, so making that commitment is really important. And I think this is similar to any behavioral change goals that we might have, whether it's eating healthier or exercising more, or you fill in the blank, but getting into the mindset that saving and investing is important for me to do and possible, right? So figuring out how can we pay ourselves or our family first as we're looking forward to the future. All right. What are some strategies you could use to find money to pay yourself first and to commit to saving and investing? What kind of ideas would you have? What are some things that you could do based on your situation to find money to save and invest?
Let's see, we've got a side job that pays cash, auto deposit into savings accounts.
Oh, great ideas for both of those. That side job, really, right, to help build some of that extra income. And Matthew, I love the automatic savings into an account. Yeah, Naomi, going out less. Julie is suggesting dollar cost averaging and investing. So some per month rather than just one chunk a couple times a year, doing a little bit every month, right? So it's going in there. Health savings account for pre-tax, right? So Chad, you're addressing some great tax implications, but you're setting aside for healthcare expenses. There would also be some employers may offer a flex plan for childcare expenses as well. Yep, the dependent care. all really good ideas. And so it really involves having to look at our individual situation and see where we can make some small changes that would make a big difference for us. All right, we do have a handout that we will be including in our follow-up email, but it provides some great suggestions on smart changes to save dollars. And this looks at things we can do on the expense side, but I so appreciate that Amber talked about the income side as well, but planning ahead and shopping around, simply not buying something, using things wisely, share, rent, borrow, substituting things, selling or trading, finding things free, tracking those little things and being creative. So we will include this handout in the follow-up email that'll give you some additional ideas, and you'll be able to come up with some additional things for that. All right. So when we decided to offer a webinar on saving and investing, we were really debating on what do we include and what doesn't get included. And we thought, well, of course, we need to talk about interest, right? And that's how our money grows. And we heard from Nikki that money in savings grows a little bit smaller. Money in investments are going to grow a little bit faster, but there's more risk with loss there. But we just wanted to point out, so interest is really calculated as a percent of the amount borrowed or principal. And in this situation, we're really looking at the principal, what we're setting aside. The same thing happens if we borrow money, right? Then we need to pay interest as opposed to having that added on to our money. Two ways to look at it: simple interest, which is calculated only on the principal, and then compound interest, which is interest on both the initial principal plus the accumulated interest. So we're earning interest on interest. We will include in the follow-up email a link to this short video that is about 2 minutes, but we're not going to take time today because we've got many slides to go through. But this will include the link, and it'll talk about how compound interest is a beautiful thing. All right, one last thing in this section, I think I'm getting down on this section. We wanted to introduce the rule of 72, and this is a fun formula to help you estimate the number of years required to double invested money. And so if the question is, how long will it take to turn $500 into $1,000? So we want to double our money at 8% interest. Well, with this great little rule, we take 72 divided by that 8%, and we find that it'll take us 9 years to double that money. 9 years to have our $500 grow to $1,000 if we're earning 8% interest. I've got one more example here. What interest rate do I need to double my money in 6 years? So we take that 72 divided by the 6 years, and it comes up to 12%. So if I want to double my money in 6 years, I need to figure out where I could get a 12% return. So I kind of like this rule of 72 because it helps us do some quick math on how long would it take me to double my money. And when we get bigger numbers in our investments, it's really quite fun to see how quickly we might get some doubling going on based on the interest rate that we are earning. I think this is my slide, and then I'm going to turn it over to Nikki. So this one's titled Alternatives for Beginning and Small Deposit Savers and Investors. So you can see at the bottom of this little pyramid shape here, we've got savings and money market and savings accounts. And then we're moving our way up with certificates of deposits, mutual funds, stocks, commodities. And so as you go up that pyramid, there's an increasing possibility for growth. So the farther you get up on that pyramid, the more potential for growth. But also, as we go up that pyramid, there's an increasing risk of losing your principal and earnings. And so the safer sorts of things are at the bottom, the more risky things are at the top. And I really believe there's a time and place for being at different points of that pyramid. Nikki.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Okay, so we are going to move into saving. And I may just preface this section as well as Sarah's next piece on investing, but we're really just going to be kind of touching on the basics here. In a 1-hour webinar, we simply don't have all of the time to really dig into each topic too in depth, but we did want to make sure that we were able to cover a lot of the basic information here. So let's dig into saving a little bit here. So when we look at savings, we kind of think of this as there's various layers, right? We've got the set aside savings and emergency savings that are going to be really foundational to our financial plan. Sarah's also going to be touching on that retirement saving and investing in just a bit here. But what do these all mean, right? So we've got these set aside accounts or these set aside savings. It's also sometimes referred to as a put and take account, where you're going to put some money aside over here so that you can easily kind of take it and use it for some of these short-term or intermediate goals. Okay. Again, very easily accessible if you need them. These set aside accounts are also going to be really good for those non-monthly periodic expenses. I always think of this kind of category as, okay, I know every year I need to re-up the tabs on my car. Okay, not something that's happening monthly, but it's a periodic expense happening every once in a while. We can though also use these set aside accounts for some expected expenses. And before I give you all the answers on that, I should actually get to our next question on the next slide here. But what do you think some examples of items or services might be for a set aside account? What do you think an example of an item or service to save for in a set aside account? Aha, I'm so glad. I was going to give the new tires as my example, so I'm glad I refrained there. Yeah, new tires. It could be taxes. Replacement of appliances, good. Anything else? What else can you think of that might be a set aside expense or need to go into a set aside account? Okay, medical needs, definitely. Vacation, I was hoping somebody would mention that. House repairs. Kiddos tuition, potentially. That might also fall into your longer term investment plan. I suppose it depends on the time frame there. Holiday expenses, gifts, presents. Okay, excellent. Yes. Okay, so you guys are getting a really nice handle on what those set aside expenses or what that set aside account would be for. But what about unexpected expenses, right? These ones are always a little bit trickier. So what we know is that 4 in 10 adults are faced with an unexpected expense of $400. And if that were to happen, they would either not be able to cover it, or they would have to cover it by selling something or borrowing money. So really, people are finding that they're not financially prepared to successfully respond to that emergency, and definitely not a disaster. Oh, I'm seeing a few in here. Okay, yeah, hail damage, right. And we want to make sure that we can be prepared for these unexpected expenses, right? We know that they're going to crop up every once in a while here. So how do we best prepare ourselves for this scenario? Well, at times, right, this might fit into a set aside account. You know, you blew a tire. well, we know tires don't last forever. So perhaps we already have that money set aside in our set aside account. However, sometimes those things are a little bit more, they're a little bit greater, and again, maybe even a little bit more unexpected. The hail damage, something that might be classified as an emergency, right? Maybe it's a really unexpected medical emergency, or it could also be an emergency where there's been an interruption of income. Perhaps you lost some hours at work. Perhaps you are no longer able to get overtime and you've kind of been relying on that income. When there's that interruption of income, we also want to make sure that we have this emergency fund or this emergency savings. Oh, I should probably turn the slide for you guys so you can see what I'm talking about. These emergency funds or emergency savings. So again, this could be when you've got a really major unexpected expense. It might also be when we've got that interruption of income. So what do you need? How much should we have in this emergency fund? Well, 3 to 6 months of expenses is a good rule of thumb to follow. However, sometimes that seems a little bit overwhelming, and that's okay. We can start a lot smaller. You know, let's start with a goal of $500. A little bit of something in that emergency fund is definitely better than nothing, and we have to start somewhere, right? And what's interesting about these emergency savings is that, again, we know a lot of people are not really prepared for these emergencies. In fact, it's about 24% of people that have no savings set aside for emergencies. 39% of folks have less than a month of income saved for emergencies, and 37% have at least a month of income saved, excuse me. So we need to do a little bit better job, or at least aim for doing a better job about creating this emergency fund. So again, start off with a smaller goal of $500 if you don't have more of that already, and then eventually get up to that 3 to 6 months of expenses saved up. So thinking about an emergency fund, how do you think this could be a lifesaver? How do you think an emergency fund could be a lifesaver? Vet bills definitely saves you from going into debt or having to borrow. Good, stops you from using credit. Excellent. Yeah, that's exactly why we want to have that emergency fund around. So where can we put these savings? Where can we have this set aside account or this emergency fund? We've got a lot of different options here. Bank accounts, credit unions, prepaid cards, simply saving some money at home. And what we want you to really note here is that there's benefits to each of these different scenarios, as well as some potential risks. What's great about a bank account is that it is federally insured up to $250,000 per depositor, as well as credit unions. Credit unions are also insured. However, they're insured by the National Credit Union Association. So putting your money in either of those places really does protect you and protects against the loss of what you've deposited. You know, when you're just saving some money, you've got like a nice coin jar at home. I know that's where all of my set aside vacation fund goes. It's just like a jar in the laundry room that I can toss some extra change into, some loose bills. So it's really easy to access, but just some options for you.
Nikki, if I could jump in as well, we do some education and work on disaster preparedness and disaster recovery. And so when I look at home on this chart, it would be good to have a small amount of cash, and it might be a couple $100s in smaller bills, not $100 bills, because if that that tornado or flooding goes through and maybe all the ATMs and the banks are closed, you might need money to get gas and groceries and a few things. So in one way, it's appropriate to have a small amount of cash, a couple hundred, 2, 3. You need to decide what that might be. But we don't want everything stuck under the mattress, because it's probably not real safe, and again, not earning us much either.
Thanks for that, Sarah. I appreciate it. We also have here just a couple of additional options. Savings bonds. You could family or friend, or CDs or certificate of deposits would also be an option for a place in which you can save your money for those set aside expenses, as well as your emergency fund. And I believe Sarah's going to touch on some bonds in a bit too, but now, what do you do if you have been denied a savings account? Well, there's a couple of steps that you can take. The first thing that you're going to want to do is request your banking history report. And you can request your report by visiting CFPB or the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Thanks, Rick. I think just added that into the chat for you there. And you're going to want to look at that report, review it, ensure that there's not any errors. If you happen to find an error, file a dispute, and you can also find that information on the website there. If you're reviewing things and you recognize that, hey, there isn't a dispute, you might want to check out whether or not your bank or credit union has a second chance or a checklist checking account type of option. They've got some different features and restrictions than a standard checking or savings account, but could be a really nice option for you as well. And finally, one more note on saving. Tax time is a phenomenal time of the year in which you can maybe do some additional saving, kind of tuck some things away for you. Just save a portion of that tax refund. You can have your tax refund direct deposited in up to 3 accounts. So maybe you just want to direct deposit it right into your savings account. Yeah. And utilize those tax credits when you can in order to kind of tuck away the extra dollars. So thinking about saving those set asides, those emergency funds, what is one thing you think you can do now to start or increase your saving? What's one thing you can do now to start or increase your saving? Kate, you and I are on the same page here. Maybe it's the same last name thing. I was honestly thinking too, I'm like, I don't know the last time I did my debt to net income ratio. I need to do this again. Check out my snapshot. Anybody else? Reevaluate withholding so I don't get a huge tax refund. Okay, yeah. That's a great option, Matthew. Use that money before the refund comes.
I think for me, I'm going to really watch how much I'm driving. With gas over $4 a gallon, I am really going to limit that expense so I can spend less and hopefully save a little more.
I've had that conversation with my teenager, Sarah. Oh, and Teresa, limiting out to eat. Great. Thanks all for contributing to the chat there. I'll turn it back over to you, Sarah, to talk about investing.
Thanks, Nikki. So we're going to talk investing in the next short while here. And again, as Nikki and I were pulling this presentation together, we thought we could maybe do 2 full days on these topics so we could get into the weeds a little bit. But again, this is going to be just a quick overview. You've seen this slide before, but I wanted to bring it back again to recognize we're moving up that pyramid. And so again, we're increasing possibility to grow money, but we're also increasing possibility of losing money. So increasing that risk as we're shifting from saving to investing conversation. So repetition here, I guess, is good. So with investing, there's a greater chance of losing money than when you save. So we could lose principal. That earnings is not a guaranteed thing. Typically in investment vehicles, there's not that insurance. So the FDIC and the NCUA, so the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation and the National Credit Union Association. And so those really cover those accounts. If I have money in my bank or credit union savings or share account and the bank or credit union goes under, that's where that insurance kicks in. With investments, there typically is not that support there. Also, as we talked about with investing, there's that opportunity to earn more money than most savings strategies. So we're keeping you all busy by chatting with us, and we find that really valuable. So why do people typically invest, or what are they investing for? Why are they doing it? For retirement, yes. Other ideas. I have several coworkers who are retiring, and I'm just a little too young yet to do that, but I've got my eye on that prize. Oh, for better income. All right, so to get more return, right? So having your money work for you. Thanks, Ambar. Good idea, because we want our money to work for us. Any other reasons why people might invest? Kids tuition, yep, and especially if we've got that longer time frame. Nikki's bringing that one back up because we had that earlier on the savings, so it depends upon the age of those kids. Maybe buying a home, right? So if we're saving for quite a while to develop that or pull together that down payment. Yep, for sure. So people are investing for a wide variety of reasons. And that goes back to that. Remember one of those first slides when we talked about setting goals. Everyone's situation is going to be pretty unique. As we were digging around for information to include in the presentation, I absolutely loved this piece from the Security and Exchange Commission, an investor preparedness checklist. And so we're going to work our way through it. Start early. So the time value of money, right? The longer our money has to grow, the better it's going to do, right? So when I have an opportunity to work with young people, I'm encouraging them to start setting money aside for retirement, because at age 20 or 25 or even 30, they've got a lot more years than those of us that are getting a little bit gray, right? So starting early is really important. And that can be one of the most valuable gifts that we give to our children or the younger people around us is those nudges and that encouragement. And maybe even sometimes it's sharing the stories that, oh, I wish I had started earlier. Identify your financial goals. Back to that beginning again. You know, what are your goals? What are you dreaming about? And our goals are going to shift and move a little bit as we go through our life course, but there are some that remain the same. It's important to create a savings and investment plan based on your goals. So that's why we talked about goal setting before we moved on to the spending plan or budget, so that we can build those into the plan. If you have that high interest debt, right, get those paid off. That's why we looked at that debt to net income ratio, so you can see where you are at. This one says to pay that high interest debt off first. I agree with that to a point, but if I have an employer that is offering some match on a 401k, I want to make sure I'm at least putting enough in to get that match while I'm paying off my high interest debt. So doing both of those at the same time could be important, right? Okay, so if your company offers a 401k plan, and if they have any employer match, definitely get at least enough in to get that match, as I talked about. Investor.gov is a beautiful website, and we'll have that on a resource list, and we'll include it in the follow-up email. But you can go there and do a background check on any investment professionals to make sure that they're registered. When you're thinking about doing some investing and saving, we want to make sure we're working with credible people, right? Understand your risk tolerance. We'll be looking at that in just a minute. Understand investment fees and their impact on returns, right? Someone's got to manage those accounts and those funds, and different companies, different organizations, different people charge different amounts, and you don't want to be wasting all your money on fees. Research all investments thoroughly. So we have to do that. Check your investments regularly and maintain a diversified portfolio. We'll be talking about that as well. Avoid investment opportunities that sound too good to be true, right? That sounds like my grandma. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And so it should be like this red beacon light that we need to be checking that out. So this is no time to be gullible. We need to question and check things out thoroughly. All right, Nikki and I both love this picture, and I have some hens in my backyard. These are not my hen's eggs, but I love the picture. Diversify your investments. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? So it helps balance out our plan. So if something does not so good in the investment realm, we hopefully have other accounts and investments that are doing better. So diversification. When we look at risk tolerance, some questions to ask yourself here. When will you need the money? So typically, if you don't need the money for quite a while, so if we're looking at our 20-year-old who is doing some investment saving for retirement, they can probably do a little more risky investments, right? Those of us that are in our 50s or 60s, we probably don't want to be doing such risky items because we don't have as much time to recover if things happen. So how much time and do you need until you need that money? What are your goals? So again, thinking about what are those goals? And retirement, and do you want to have a lot of money for retirement so you can travel, or do you want just to pay off your house and then garden in your backyard? So thinking about those goals. I think this last one is a big one, and this is a great litmus test for many people. Will you be able to sleep at night? And we all have different risk tolerance levels. There are many nights when I'm sitting up in bed worrying about something, right? My husband's snoring away. So different risk tolerance levels there, but you need to figure out what yours are. All right. So there are a lot of different investment options, but we're going to touch real quickly here on bonds, stocks, and mutual funds. So bonds are really like an IOU. You're lending money to a company. And so those borrowers are issuing bonds to raise money from investors for a certain amount of time. So when you buy a bond, you're lending money to them. It might be a government, it might be a city, it might be a corporation. And so the issuer is promising to pay a specified rate of interest during the life of the bond and to repay not only the principal, what I put in or what I lent them, so we'll get that principal back, and when it matures, we're going to get that interest or earnings as well. Stocks are a type of security that gives stockholders a share of ownership. So I'm purchasing a part of that company. And stocks offer investors the greatest potential for growth over the long haul. But again, there's no guarantee that the company will grow or do well. So we could lose money in stocks. Then we look at mutual funds. And this is where a company pools money from many investors and invests the money in securities such as stocks, bonds, and short-term debt. So they have kind of a combination. So you might think there's some diversification happening here within mutual funds, and that's true. So the combined holdings are known as a portfolio. So investors buy shares in mutual funds, which represents part ownership of the fund and the income it generates. So typically there's professional management, there's that diversification, there can be some affordability and some liquidity. It will take a little bit to get money out if you have an emergency or a crisis. But all funds carry some level of risk. But you can see how mutual funds offer some benefits that stocks and bonds alone don't. So we're going to quickly talk about a few different accounts, retirement and education. So retirement, there are employer-sponsored retirement plans. We look at the 401k, and we have the traditional and the Roth versions. Primary difference there are tax implications. With the traditional, we are using pre-tax dollars to invest, and then when we pull money out, then we are going to pay taxes on that. Some employers may do a match. On the Roth side of the thing, we are using post-tax, or we're making contributions after we've paid taxes. So then the money's going to grow, hopefully, and then when we pull that out at the end, we're not going to pay taxes on that. There are also some other employer-sponsored retirement plans, 403Bs, 457Bs, and those are for certain types of employers, maybe some schools, nonprofits, and such. And all of these have contribution limits that are set by the IRS. And we also have IRAs, or individual retirement accounts, and these provide tax advantages for retirement savings. Again, contributions limits are set by the IRS, and there are the traditional and Roth, so the different tax treatments there, pre and post tax. And then the SEP and the simple are special IRAs for self-employed and other perhaps small companies. So how much do you need for retirement? It depends, right? Again, what is your retirement going to look like? Are you planning to travel? Are you going to be sitting in your backyard? What age do you want to retire? Can you participate in an employer plan? If you have a partner in life, are they doing some savings and investing? And at what age do they plan to retire? Where do you plan to live? Are you going to own? Are you going to rent? Are you going to downsize? Do you expect to work part-time in retirement? What about medical insurance? That's a huge piece for many people in retirement. Will you have that same insurance, or what kind of cost will there be? Again, do you want to travel or pursue a costly hobby? USA.gov and investor.gov, and again, we'll include these links in the, thanks Rick, we'll include these links in the follow-up email, have got some nice calculators to help people personalize this question a little bit. Also, we wanted to just touch real quickly on some education opportunities, or some investments for education. 529 plans are tax advantage savings designed to encourage saving for educational costs. They're known as those qualified tuition plans, and they're often sponsored by states or state agencies or educational institutions. So there's some prepaid tuition plans and education savings plans. And so this is one way to save for education. Other folks may choose to do some mutual funds and other things to save. But we wanted to share this, and we're getting really close on time here, but saving for education if you have children is important. One of our colleagues out west did a webinar for AFCPE, the Association for Financial Counseling and Planning Education, and he shared that children who had at least or almost $500 in savings or investing, whatever, they are 3 times more likely to enroll in college than a child with no savings. And they're more than 4.5 times more likely to graduate. And so who graduates? Typically only 5% of low to moderate income children with no savings. 25% of those that have $499 dollars or less, and 33% of those with $500 or more set aside. So having that can-do attitude and what can I do today to set dollars aside for that education is so very important. I am going to jump ahead here. We will include these links in the resources, but I love this top one from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. We pulled a lot of the information on the savings from there, but they've got some great worksheets. You can order a hard copy of this booklet or download it, take a look at it online, but some great ways to look at building your savings. And then the USA.gov and the investor.gov can really help you dig in with specific questions that you have. If you have questions, be sure to put those in the chat as I go through these last few slides, and we'll be sure to address those as we pull together our follow-up email. If you need a certificate of participation, we can provide that, and we just need you to do the evaluation, and we'll have the link on the next slide. If any of you are University of Minnesota employees and you have the university insurance, they're now offering well-being points for participation in our webinars, so that information also is available through the evaluation. Rick is going to put the link to the eval in the chat. Thanks, Rick. And we'll also include it in that follow-up email. And do expect to get an email from us about 30 days after the last webinar in this series. And in that, we're going to have another quick evaluation to find out what actions, what behaviors did you take as a result of participating in the webinar. And also in that email, so watch for it, we'll have links or a playlist to all of the recorded webinars in this series. And this happens to be our Making Sense of It All series. And I should have taken these first few off, but we're way down here on May 24th, saving and investing. So we have 2 more webinars next week on credit reports and scores. And then Nikki, I think you are helping with the saving money when feeding your family. So that one's coming up in June as well. We also have a couple webinars on pollinators and foraging, some on getting moving, Somali grocery stores and how they have been helpful with the COVID vaccines, and developmental affirmations. We have several related to housing. We have a book club or a book read coming up. So if you're interested in that, take a look. And then a couple on recovery and health, looking at harm reduction and opioid overdoses. If you are a Spanish speaker or you have friends, colleagues, clients that are Spanish speaking, we have some of our colleagues are doing some webinars in Spanish on helping kids with learning over the summer and staying mentally healthy during the summer, the transition of who gets grandma's yellow pie plate. So how do we pass on those non-titled property, and how to prepare for a school year. We invite you to get social with us. And so we'll include these links, but our University of Minnesota Extension Center for Family Development is on Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Check us out, and I'll be sure to include the link here to sign up for our Family News e-newsletter so you can stay in touch with us. Thank you, Amber. I appreciate that comment. I was stressing a little bit that we just couldn't fit everything into an hour, and we didn't. But this is a good starting point and a good conversation, and hopefully a friendly nudge to help people move in the right direction. So we want to thank you for being with us today. Please fill out the evaluation, and there's a question in there on what other topics should we address. And if you indicate we should really have a more in-depth piece on investing, we could definitely look at pulling something together, but share those comments and thoughts with us. So We're only 4 minutes over, so I'm super thrilled about that. But thanks for being with us. I think I'm going to ask Rick